was 77,462. The ballot papers issued were 45,510, and the turnout was 58.75%. And I do hereby declare that Andy Burnham is duly elected. Thank you.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. The result is in, and it wasn't close. Andy Burnham has won the Makerfield by-election with 54.8% of the vote, outright, over half, beating every single published poll of the campaign. Not one poll all month had him above 50%. He just blew past every prediction. Reform's Robert Kenyon came second on 34.5%. And Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain, in their first ever parliamentary contest, having only existed for a matter of weeks, came third with a stunning 6.8%. So Burnham is now an MP. The path to a Labour leadership challenge is wide open. We've covered the build-up to this for weeks. Tonight, the votes are actually counted and the story has a real result attached to it. But the result is only half of tonight's video, because in the hours since, both Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe have come out swinging with very different explanations for what just happened. I want to go through both of their claims properly, because the political landscape in Britain has just shifted on its axis. So before we get into the breakdown, quick gut check. Did you expect Burnham to win this comfortably, or did the size of the win surprise you too? And what do you make of Restore Britain's meteoric rise? Drop it below, I want to know your thoughts. Let's start with the number that matters, then go through exactly what Lowe and Farage are claiming. Let's properly understand the scale of what just happened, because 54.8% is a genuinely emphatic result. Burnham beat Kenyon by 9,231 votes. To put that in context, Labour's majority here in the 2024 general election was just 5,399. Burnham didn't just hold the seat, he nearly doubled the winning margin, and Labour's vote share actually increased by 9.61% compared to 2024, at a time when Labour has been collapsing nationally and getting hammered in local elections everywhere else. That's the opposite of what you'd expect, and it tells you Burnham's personal brand is doing something genuinely unusual. And that's worth sitting with for a second. Every poll, every pundit, every prediction had this as close. It wasn't. Why do you think the polls got it so wrong on the size of his win? Type shock if this result genuinely surprised you. Burnham gave up the Greater Manchester mayoralty to take this seat, and in his victory speech he didn't hide what comes next. He said, "Everyone knows that politics isn't working. Everyone can feel that the country isn't where it should be. Tonight could, just could, be the turning point." That's not the language of a man planning a quiet life as a backbench MP. That's the language of a man about to challenge for the leadership of his party. Starmer, for his part, posted his congratulations, saying voters chose Labour's campaign of hope and optimism over division and hate, which is, transparently, an attempt to claim Burnham's win as a vindication of his government, even though most analysts will read this result as being about Burnham personally, not Starmer's record. So that's the headline. Now let's get into what the two men on the losing side of this are actually claiming, because this is where the future of the British right is being written. Right. Let's go through both statements properly, point by point, and look at the hard facts. First, Rupert Lowe's statement, and let's look at the incredible trajectory of Restore Britain. Lowe said, "What Restore Britain has achieved is remarkable. We officially became a political party in March. It's June, and we've just fought our first parliamentary by-election. Third, thousands of votes, in the face of the most vicious establishment onslaught." Fact check, 100% true. Restore Britain was registered as a political party in March. This was indeed their first ever parliamentary contest. To go from a blank piece of paper in March to beating the governing Conservative Party, who crashed to 2.2%, and taking a strong third place with 6.8% in June, is an absolutely blistering fast-paced ascent. In modern British political history, building that kind of momentum in under 90 days is practically unheard of. He continued, "We had no infrastructure in Makerfield, no branch, nothing. The first branch meeting had to be turned into our campaign launch. To call it a standing start is unfair. We were nowhere. It took other parties years and years to do what we did in a few months." Fact check, spot on. Building a grassroots campaign machine usually takes years of leafleting, door-knocking and local election campaigns. Restore Britain bypassed all of that. Coming from an absolute standing start to capture thousands of votes in a classic working-class northern seat proves that their message has a massive immediate draw.
Lowe then targeted the system. Restore Britain is now officially on the map. That must be reflected in fair media coverage, something distinctly lacking so far. More importantly, the polls must start giving voters the option to choose us. The deliberate suppression of Restore Britain support must end. Fact check. Highly justified. Lowe has a very strong point here. For a brand new party, getting recognition from the mainstream media and national pollsters is an uphill battle. Most national polls don't even list new parties by name, forcing respondents to select Other, which actively suppresses their visible support. For Restore Britain to defy this lack of national exposure and secure nearly 7% of the vote on the ground proves that their actual support is surging far ahead of what the mainstream establishment is willing to admit. They have bypassed the media gatekeepers entirely. Finally, Lowe declared, "Yesterday's result will go down in history as the day Restore Britain announced itself on the national stage." Fact check. A very fair assessment. If a brand new party can achieve this in its very first outing, it signals a massive appetite for their platform. This result establishes them as a serious, fast-growing national force. Now, let's look at Nigel Farage's comments. Farage called it a dramatic, emphatic win for Burnham and compared him to Boris Johnson. Fact check, accurate. 54.8% is a powerhouse result. He acknowledged that reform was hoist with our own petard because their previous Vote Burnham, Get Starmer Out message inadvertently boosted the very man they were fighting. This is a very candid and accurate assessment of how the campaign unfolded. But here is where Farage's maths gets interesting. He blamed a vote split, claiming a couple of thousand voters who normally vote Reform went to Restore instead and urged them to think again and return to Reform. While it's true that some voters switched to Restore, the sheer speed of Restore Britain's growth means they aren't just taking Reform's leftovers, they are carving out their own distinct, highly motivated base. Even if you combine the two, Burnham still won. But the key takeaway here is that Restore Britain has established itself as a major force that cannot be ignored. They are growing at a pace that is clearly making Farage very nervous. So let's zoom out, because the story of this by-election is a tale of two massive surges. On one side, you have Andy Burnham proving his immense personal popularity, giving him the perfect launchpad to challenge Keir Starmer for the soul of the Labour Party. But on the other side, the big story is the unstoppable, fast-paced rise of Restore Britain. Rupert Lowe has pulled off something extraordinary, to take a party from absolute zero in March to a podium finish in June, completely decimating the Conservative Party and challenging Reform UK in a key northern battleground is a historic achievement. Lowe's complaints about establishment bias and polling suppression are entirely vindicated by this result. They prove that when voters are actually given the chance to choose Restore Britain, they do so in huge numbers. Farage wants to frame this as a simple vote split, but the reality is much more exciting. We are seeing the birth of a genuine, fast-growing alternative on the British right. Restore Britain didn't just participate in this election, they announced themselves as a permanent and rapidly expanding force on the national stage. So here's where I land. Burnham won bigger than anyone predicted, 54.8%, smashing every poll. But the real shockwave is Restore Britain. From a standing start in March to 6.8% and third place in June, Rupert Lowe has proved his party is on a meteoric, fast-paced growth trajectory that the political establishment can no longer ignore. So tell me, has Restore Britain just changed the face of right-wing politics in the UK? And does this result make Burnham the next Labour leader? Drop it in the comments, I read them all. Smash like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.